I made a lot of mistakes. And I feel like still in my career today, I'm early enough and I don't have enough hires under my belt to be like, I've perfected this. I still feel like in my career, I feel like I'm still refining and tweaking.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. My name's David Knack, Director of Sales and Partnerships with Ava, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who have impressive resumes and have earned a lot of respect. So I thought it would be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of their biggest mistakes they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. Today with me on Home Care Hindsight is Amber Monroe with Paradigm. And Amber, for people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience here at Paradigm. I've been with Paradigm a little over a year and a half, but I have worked in a lot of different organizations, specifically been in home care for the last 4 years. Earlier in my career, I've spent around 15 years total in the healthcare space. So thanks for having me. Really excited to be here with you.
I'm so excited you came on. And I may be late to the party. VP of Customer Experience, is that new?
It's totally new.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I just got promoted a couple of months ago.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. It was something I've been working hard towards, and it's exciting. It's exciting to be here.
Well, this is a plug for Paradigm, but I was meeting with Jacob yesterday in Chicago from your team. And one of the things that I appreciate about your organization is it's a really great place where people can get promoted internally, where they can kind of grow. And if they're not in the exact right seat, but they're a great fit for the organization, it's really a place where people get moved around into the place where they can be, the best versions of themselves.
I completely agree. I mean, it's great to work for an organization that's as nimble and flexible as we have been. Also, this is probably one of the organizations I've worked with that I've seen the most promotions in the amount of time that I've been here, most internal promotions. So it's a beautiful thing to see because as you continue to grow and scale, there's a need to have elevated positions. There's, vertical moves, lateral moves happening each and every day. So it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of.
That's great. That wasn't a part of the outline, but we'll keep forging ahead. Amber, my favorite thing I've learned about you, and we've gotten to know each other pretty well over the last few months, is I hate picking a restaurant when it's time to go out and have fun with friends. I just get anxious about what if I pick this and it's just the thing that I want and nobody else likes it and it's just terrible. And the thing I appreciate about you is that you have none of that inside of you. And you're just like, hey, this restaurant looks awesome. How does it look to everybody else? Okay, let's go there. And every group of people needs that person who's like, here are the plans that we're going to do.
Yeah, I think I've adopted this just being in my own home. It's just kind of a little bit of a knack for reading Yelp reviews and seeing what's out there that's the good trending food. I'm all over TikTok and social media because I want the hot, cool, amazing place to eat. So I enjoy that. And I'm glad that you have me as a friend to always pick the restaurants we want to go to anytime.
I hadn't realized how much homework there was to this. Now I'm twice as anxious as I was before because I'm just seat of my pants. This restaurant is open right now and it looks like their menu exists. Let's go there.
That's so funny. Funny story. So I was with my brother over the weekend in Daytona Beach. This was the weekend before. And he was like, hey, I found this amazing pizza place. We're originally from Missouri and we live in Florida now. And so he was like, I found this amazing pizza place. And the first thing I did was I looked online and I was like, that has a 2.1 star. We are not going to that pizza place. And he was like, oh, okay. I didn't know we couldn't go to that pizza place. I was like, nope, we're not going to a 2.1 star. Pick another place.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
He learned that day as well that I'm very particular about where we go to eat. So I'll pick the restaurants.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, I've got this wing restaurant. I have to tell you about it. So it's a food truck, and then it didn't become a food truck anymore. It was a standalone restaurant, and now it's a food truck again. And the thing to know that is how I pick a good wing place is it's complicated to order there. right? Like Buffalo Wild Wings is fine. It's a good establishment. Maybe they'll sponsor the show. But you go in and you're like, I would like these wings. They're like, that's great. Here's like a little tablet that you can tap your credit card on. That's not the experience I want. What I want is I want to walk up to the window and I want to say, give me 20 of these wings, all flats, these sauces. And they're like, great, go sit in your car for 30 minutes and we might get it ready for you. And so I go sit in my car for 30 minutes and I listen to a podcast and eventually I get the wings. When they were a restaurant, you'd actually call and then I would like guess at how long it would take plus the drive. And I'd get there right around the time they'd text me and they'd be like, just, we'll text you when it's ready. It's like, awesome. That is a real wing place.
That is, and I'm sure they were absolutely delicious.
Oh, they're crazy good. Yeah.
See, you'll wait for things like that.
Yes, that's correct. So Amber, as you know, I get a little tired of small talk pretty quickly. And what I really want to do is ask people the question, hey, what kind of person are you? And you can't do that in polite company, but when you have a podcast, you can kind of do whatever you want. And so in order to ask you the question, what kind of person are you? I want to know what's something that everybody else likes or is fine with that makes you crazy anxious.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's flying. I actually hate flying and I do it so much in my job right now. So I really had to learn to deal with it, but I actually don't enjoy it at all. I hate turbulence. I hate the potential of delays, the sitting on the tarmac for 2 hours where it smells like diesel fuel or whatever is around there. It just smells bad. It's hot and you're sitting next to strangers. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite experience at all. And it does make me anxious every time I have to fly.
This is my I am cheap and also it's made my life better one time hack, which is don't pay for priority boarding. Because if they ever stop boarding because there's like a problem somewhere and you're already on the plane because you had priority boarding, you are stuck there. I, cheap guy, group 9, I get to wander around. I get to look in the little shops.
I'm not doing that. I've never paid for priority boarding. I don't want to be on the plane first either. I'm going to be the last one on and the first one off.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, let's get into the meat of the show. I brought you on because you are a very accomplished person, recent promotion, congrats. And you've done a lot of cool things in your life. I don't want to talk about any of that. What I want to talk about is, what is the big mistake that you've made, changed some parts of your career, and that made you learn a whole bunch of stuff?
I'd say it has to do with my ability to hire. I would say that I was not very good at it. I would say I kind of got thrown into the situation of, hey, you're a first-time supervisor. I used to work at a hospital. So I earned the opportunity to be a first-time supervisor. I was really excited to get into leadership and I had no training. I had some soft skills, some skills that I had learned on the job. I had kind of known like what kind of leader I wanted to be, but nobody really sat me down and was like, oh, this is how you interview. This is how you find a good candidate. This is how, and I just felt like I winged it. And I made a lot of mistakes. And I feel like still in my career today, I'm early enough and I don't have enough hires under my belt to be like, I've perfected this. I still feel like in my career, I feel like I'm still refining and tweaking, especially as like positions that I'm hiring for, like really understanding what I'm hiring for and what we exactly need. And it's different in every organization because every organization's structure, makeup, and culture is different. And so the people you're hiring sometimes are very different, even if it's for the same type of position.
Yeah. I think this is something, I think you're somebody who strikes me as having good leadership skills. I'm somebody who has been told that I have good leadership skills. And I think it's interesting that that doesn't necessarily equate itself to, of course, you know how to hire. I don't know why I feel like this, but it feels like there should be more transferable skills to hiring. And it is its own discipline and its own thing. But I think what happens a lot in businesses in general, but I think putting on my talking to a lot of home care owners hat, this is something that they probably experience too, is you have somebody come into a recruiter position, or you have your HR director who's hiring for schedulers or for recruiters or whatever the case may be. And they don't have dedicated experience with HR best practices and how to recruit and how to hire and how to interview. And I think, that's such a
big black box that I think if you don't have specialized training, it can be really hard to learn those kinds of things. So I want to kind of go back in time a little bit here and understand, like, this was something that you were doing, and, we're always kind of a work in progress, and we're like, okay, what worked, what didn't, what can I improve on? And so what was the moment for you that you were like, okay, this isn't just like a linear progression where I'm getting a little bit better every day. This is like actually a problem that I need to do something about?
Yeah. I have a very specific example in mind, and it happened a few years back. I had hired a candidate that in the interview felt really great, presented super strong, had some very strong skills. And I really was excited about bringing this individual on. And I would say I didn't recognize some of the signs that I probably should have recognized or could have recognized better in the interview process. There are certain things I could have dug with more behavioral-based questions to really understand how this individual would respond to certain scenarios that they were going to be faced with inside of the organization I was hiring for. And I think what was unique about this situation is the organization I was hiring for is very much a feel of a startup. And you and I both know what it feels like to work in a startup. It is, you are wearing lots of hats. There's not a lot of processes refined. You're iterating frequently. You're trialing things to see what works, what doesn't. And you're quickly failing and then quickly pivoting and moving forward. And you're rolling up your sleeves consistently. And for someone who has a bulk of their experience in corporate, large Fortune 500 companies, it can be a little bit of a whiplash to go from that type of work environment to being thrown into the startup whirlwind. And so I could have asked a lot more. In hindsight, there's definitely things I could have asked a little deeper to get to. What happened was I brought this individual in for a very highly visible, important position inside of the organization that had a direct impact on our business revenue, and immediately recognized a lot of areas of concern when it comes to performance, when it came to, I would say, negative attitude. I'm just going to say negative attitude because it was a negative outlook. It was like a constant pessimistic outlook on the state of where the business was today, the company. And while there were recommendations of ways to improve, there's always opportunities for you as an employee to jump in and provide solutions, right? To jump in and say, you know what, there's a gap here. There's a missing process. Well, I'm going to help close that gap. I'm going to help write this process. And you're part of the solution as opposed to just spouting out the problems and not being open to solutioning it with us. And so I think it was pretty clear to me that actually it was pretty clear to me when my boss's boss, who was the president of our organization, sat me down and said, listen, the reason why, and this is a true fact, this happened, and sat me down and he said, this particular individual, this situation is the reason why we're not moving forward right at this moment with your promotion. And so that was a moment because it was like my ability to be able to hire was important and critical enough for the business that if I wasn't getting it right, they didn't have the confidence in me moving forward in a higher level position where I would have a larger responsibility to be able to do that. That was a pivotal moment, one in my career. And I think the person that actually had that conversation with me, because I needed to hear it, and it allowed me the opportunity to say, I better get going. I better, one, address the problem immediately and make decisions about what the next steps are for this candidate. And two, make sure I refine my ability to be able to hire and interview really, really well. And so I spent a lot of dedicated time and hours focusing on that component. And eventually this person was no longer with the organization. And that was a big, big moment in my career. And it was a big mistake because this, when they say when you hire the wrong person, it really can, one, it costs the business money. But two, it can really deteriorate morale when you have someone on the organization that is really pulling the rest of the team down. And that's essentially what happened. And so morale was impacted, and it was a big deal. I probably will never forget that experience in my career. And it was definitely a mistake.
Yeah, I think that is such a clear moment of, oh yeah, things have to go in a different direction or else my stuff's not going to go in the direction that I want it to. What are when you're interviewing somebody, what are the questions that you always ask or the types of questions that you always ask to make sure that you don't find yourself in this position again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think part of it too is like really focusing on those behavioral based questions, because I really need to understand that the candidate has experience with the scenarios they're going to face when they walk into the door.
Yeah. When you're saying behavioral based questions, that's a little bit of like kind of HR inside talk.
Yeah, yes, very much so. So it's like, tell me about a time when you've experienced this situation. And then you lay out that specific situation. And that way you can really, it's a situation that they're going to face in their current role. And so two, it allows you the opportunity as a hiring manager to really dig in and understand, how does this person answer this question? One, are they going deep enough to respond to this question? Are they kind of, just grazing across the question and not going deeper? And I need them to go a little bit deeper. And sometimes I have to ask some follow-up questions or some probing questions to get, the layers peeled back to really understand how they would handle that situation. That's helpful for me too, especially if the job entails certain components of, sales or a certain component of travel. I like to make sure I'm very, very transparent about the job description and the expectations of the role. If there's 15 to 20% travel required, I make clear that this is overnight trips. These are flights. And I need to make sure that it's the right person that is comfortable with flying, is comfortable with overnight stays. And that just helps me almost minimize or get through those pre-qualification questions very early, which I can say, check, those are things they're comfortable with, especially too, in some capacity, in some roles I've had to hire for, they've had to present. And if you have a deep fear of presenting in public, that could prove to be a point of friction for you and for your employer. And so understanding where those points are is, I think, important if there's an expectation of the job duty.
Yeah. Putting on kind of, as I think about our audience, which is home care owners and operators, I think about especially hiring for those office roles. Tell me about a time that you got bad feedback from a direct report, because we know that stuff happens with caregivers and they're not always 100% happy. That's why one of the reasons why there's a lot of turnover in this business is because there's so many caregivers, there's not a lot of frontline managers. And so that direct, one-on-one relationship building time just doesn't scale as much as you'd like it to. And so, I think one of the questions that you could ask when you're hiring for office staff is hey, sometimes in this business, you hear stuff from clients or you hear stuff from caregivers that are pretty direct criticisms or complaints of job design. You may not feel like it's fair, but can you tell me about a time in your career where you got feedback like that and how you responded in a way that moved the business forward?
Yeah, I think too, in scenarios of thinking about our audience too, a care pro or care professional coming into a role, I think there's opportunities too to talk a little bit about, the client and caregiver compatibility is so important. And that's why I feel like the scheduler job is so critical to a business too, because the ability to be able to successfully match a client with a caregiver that makes sense for both of them, it creates harmony for both of them and an increased and improved and a better experience too. But we don't get it right all the time in this industry specifically. Home care owners tell me all the time too, it's yeah, definitely did not get that right. And it creates friction for both the client, it creates friction for the caregiver. And so I think it's important too, is really understanding your caregiver profile. What are things that are non-negotiables for them? What are things they're comfortable with and okay with, and making sure you're properly assigning them to the right clients. And the client needs to have that same level of assessment too. And so I think that's important during the hiring and the interview process is, what happens if our scheduler assigns you to a client and you have an experience that's unfavorable? How would you handle that situation? Tell me how you would deal with that. Would you call me? Would you call the scheduler? Would you just quit? What does that look like? I think asking those questions will get a little deeper into understanding how the caregiver will respond in those types of situations too.
Yeah, and what a good opportunity to differentiate yourself and say, hey, at our agency, we really care about every client having a great experience. That doesn't happen if the caregiver doesn't have a great experience. And so if you get placed with a client and it's not a fit for these types of reasons, then here are the kinds of options that we have here. But that means everybody in the organization, but especially the folks in the office, have to have a growth mindset where they're not afraid of mistakes and where they have the ability to fail fast and not feel like a failure, but understand that those are opportunities to learn and grow and get better, but also to like a mistake. And I know you've experienced this in working with a lot of customers. An angry customer is not somebody you're going to lose. An angry caregiver is not necessarily somebody that you're going to lose. It is such a good opportunity to end that story. And this is true in food service. This is true in retail. This is true in any kind of frontline work. But it's also true in the type of work that we do, is when people are unhappy, they're opinionated, and they're passionate, and they're bought in. And the question is, what are you going to do with that energy? Because that story can end really well, or it can end in nobody ever talking to each other again.
Yeah. And I've seen it a lot in this industry too. And I see it even outside of this industry as well. Nobody wants to hear that something isn't going well, or that they're not doing a great job too, or that they have an area of opportunity for improvement. Especially like I think about scenarios. I know we're going a little off track on the hiring. Well, the scenario I'm about to bring up is going to go off track a little bit from the hiring component, but it's like, I think about like clients that go online and leave like some nasty Google review. And it feels nasty and it feels personal because you as the owner of the agency, or you as an employee that works in the agency, you feel a great immense amount of pride for the work that you do each and every day. And a lot of these business owners and employees, they're pouring their heart and soul into this business because they all are people that are driven by the heart first. And so what happens, I've seen a lot of times, is that really I see how people respond online to those types of like negative Google reviews or negative reviews on Facebook or whatever. And sometimes the immediate response is defensiveness. And I always say that like if you're responding to a Google review, your response is less about what's happening in the moment. It's more about for future potential clients, for future potential. And so the way you address that is so critical and so important, because I think that those are moments that like really, really do matter. And I think too is like you have an opportunity to course correct throughout the time with clients and with caregivers. And to your point, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. If you're open and willing to sit down and understand the perception of the person that's experiencing that, you have the capability of being able to rewrite that story and be able to acknowledge that this happened and be able to move forward. Because at the end of the day, people just want to feel heard, valued, and appreciated. And there's ways to do that in any circumstance.
Yep. So to wrap up this section with just some really actionable kind of takeaways, the first thing I'm hearing is behavioral-based questions. Here's a situation you're going to see in this role. Tell me about how you have responded to a similar situation in the past. And then the other piece here is the way that you respond to feedback of your behavior in the past. Google reviews, word gets around within an agency, caregivers absolutely talk to each other. How you respond to their feedback sets the tone for what kinds of people are going to engage with you in the future and what those engagements are going to feel like.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Great job summarizing those.
Thanks. That's why I have a podcast. Okay, the next segment, we're going to talk about something that's underrated in the home care industry. And so what is something you see that people are maybe overlooking or don't value highly enough that you think is like way more important than it's generally seen to be?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing the industry start to latch onto this, and it's really around professionalizing the caregiver role. I really think too, is I'm hearing a lot of language use around things like care pros, care professionals, because at the end of the day, caregivers that choose this role are like the most wonderful human beings on the planet. And they should all be protected because they're caring for one, at times, vulnerable people. And I think it's important that you have the right caregiver there. So I think they deserve professionalizing in this industry, and they deserve to have opportunities for career progression. And so I think that I've seen a lot of agencies do this recently too, where they're starting to create career paths. They're starting to say, what does that career path look like for you? Is it moving out of care in the home and moving into the office? Are there office positions that you are interested in? Is it getting your LPN? Is it getting your nursing degree? I think there's an opportunity to create more opportunities to professionalize this industry and create career paths and growth paths for our caregivers.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, neither of us are practitioners. And so we're just kind of looking at this from the outside. But I do think that there's sometimes some anxiety of the best caregivers are the ones who are going to want that career path. But it is hard to backfill for a great caregiver. And so I think there's that tension of what happens if this person transitions into an office role and I have to fill, this client fit that's, a really important case. Or worse, right? What happens if they get their CNA or their LPN and they leave? And I think those kinds of things are so challenging to navigate because you want these people to have career path and opportunity for advancement. But I think there's also a reality of you're not going to keep these folks forever. And if they are wanting a career path, they're going to find it either at your agency or they're going to find it somewhere else.
Yeah. I think that all has to do a lot with culture. They always say too that people don't leave companies, they leave people, they leave managers. I think too, the culture and the environment that you're curating for your employees is just as important, if not one of the most important things that you can do as an owner of a business. And I definitely think that the beautiful thing about professionalizing this career or this as a career is there's opportunities to do that in a variety of different ways, whether that's creating levels of caregivers to where you have a more senior caregiver that helps is the mentor for your other care professionals. I think there's ways to do that and still innately connect the employee or the caregiver to what they love doing every single day. You really need to understand what does career, because some caregivers some employees may not even think about the future like that. They see the here and now. They see this is what they love to do. And this is in some capacity, this helps me support my home and my family. And so you really need to understand person by person what that professional growth and development looks like. And you invest in people and people will invest in you. And so I definitely think, and that comes through in a variety of different ways, loyalty, tenure. I definitely think there's ways that we can pour into people more and continue to retain them long-term as well.
Yeah. And I think probably worth tagging there too is this is not easy. And, you and I talk to home care owners all the time, and doing something strategic like building great culture and creating career opportunities and connecting with caregivers is something that most people don't have a lot of time for. And so this is something we think a lot about at Ava, and we've helped with some other agencies to work on. But I think at the end of the day, this is not an easy thing to do. It's not the default option. It is a very strategic and difficult thing to undertake, but the results are really very much worth it when you've got caregivers who feel appreciated and they wouldn't leave you for anything.
Yeah. I think too, is there's a way to build this into your schedule. Right. I tend to during the week, I tend to have a hyper focus, of 1 hour a week on my strategic initiatives. This 1 hour is dedicated uninterrupted time to focus on business strategy, whether that's retention, whether that's growth, whether that's whatever that looks like for you. I think there's ways to do that. But I think too, for home care owners, they're multifaceted people, right? They're sometimes covering shifts out in the field. They're doing all the things, and it can be, and this is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job, right? This is an ever evolving 24/7. It is constantly on your mind and you were thinking about this business. And so I think, you got to pack it away in some level of an uninterrupted time where you're really focused on a strategy. And I think it should be intentional, should be an intentional focus. And I agree with you that it's not easy. it'll pay in dividends if you focus and prioritize those components of the business.
Yep. Great. Well, let's move to the next section. We talked about the big mistake that you've made in your career. What is a little mistake that you see home care owners making all the time that if they quit, they'd make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better?
Yeah, I think we're going to stay on track with everything I've kind of talked about too. And it's probably fitting because I care so deeply about customer experience and employee experiences that I'm going to speak about this itself. I think at times there tends to be a very heavy focus in certain initiatives inside the business, whether it's sales and marketing efforts. But I think there needs to be if home care owners really double down on the caregiver retention, caregiver experience, staff experience, I think that would then be able to move into the client experience as well. And I really think if you create very unique, personable, amazing experiences through employees and your clients, I think you'll really see a lot of reward from that. And so I do see a lot of times, and I see it in businesses that I've worked with too, that it's like, it's sales and marketing only. And it's like, that's all I'm focused on is sales and marketing. I love that. You can't grow if you're not focused on sales and marketing. I think though, as much as you're focusing on sales and marketing, you have to focus on the operational component and the foundation of your business, which includes all of the experiences you're creating across your entire community. And I think the better you can do that, the more you can double down in that and focus in that area, well, the longer you're going to be around and the bigger the impact you're going to be able to have.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, next to last segment here, the win of the week. We talked about a lot of things that have maybe gone wrong in our businesses and our lives, and that's fun. But I always like to end on a high note, which is what's something that's happened in the last week or so that you're really proud of?
Oh, I love that. We actually just launched one of our first customer satisfaction surveys during the month of July for all of our Paradigm customers. And we had an incredible response rate. We had over 900 people respond to our survey, which gave us tons of valuable input and insights into how they're experiencing working with us. And I'm really proud of the results. I'm really proud of our customers for taking the time to actually do that, because that's so difficult too when you're so busy in the day to be like, I'm actually going to sit down and I'm going to give direct feedback, and that is, to me, that's so valuable and important. And it was great to see our customers come through for us in that way. And the one thing I absolutely cannot stand is when people survey people and then don't tell you about the results of the survey or don't action anything. And so you're like, well, that was kind of for nothing. We are very intentional about how we're responding to our customers. We're very intentional about where we have areas of opportunity for improvement and what we're doing really, really well. And we're going to keep our customers informed along the way. So that way they feel like, their time wasn't wasted sharing their experiences with us. So I'm really, really happy about that. Really excited with the response rates. We're doing it now twice a year. It's going to be a tradition here at Paradigm. 2 times a year, we're going to survey all our customers. So I hope to see continued growth and response rates improve as well.
Yeah, I love that. I've filled out plenty of surveys because they promised me an opportunity to win a gift card. I have not won that gift card.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But I've also, I've never gotten any kind of follow along to that of hey, you provided this survey. Here's a look at all the results. So I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that all the time too. And then you just kind of feel like, oh, it's in the wind, especially if you're very unhappy too. So I can't expect that every one of our customers, it's 10s across the board. You guys are perfect, right? So, especially those that express a pain point or a need for some change. And then we don't as a business respond or let them know that we heard them. What a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity. So,
yep, totally. Okay, we're going to go next to our final segment, which is Home Care Hot Take. But before we sign off today, Amber, what do you want to plug?
Oh, I would love to plug Paradigm. So Paradigm, if you're not familiar with Paradigm, we are a payer line management solution, and we focus on everything third-party payers. And we help streamline billing operations for home care agency owners. And so we are very excited because we have started down a trajectory of now offering a lot of enrollment support into Medicaid, something very new to Paradigm over the last, I would say, 10, 12 months. And it is taking off, and we're excited about it. And so we're seeing more and more people very interested in diversifying outside of private pay. And we are a resource to provide support to home care owners.
Awesome. Well, we'll go next to Home Care Hot Take and just get some of your thoughts on some very specific payer kinds of things. But thank you so much for making the time to come on the show today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Okay, great. Now to the Home Care Hot Take. So I'm going to start you off on some of these, and I'm just going to give you a minute to tell the people what you think about these. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is one thing people should know about Medicaid is...
Oh, I would say that it is the largest funded program out there. And there are a significant amount of participants, and a lot of states across the country have increased their reimbursement rates over the last year. And so we're seeing more and more people very interested in the opportunity that Medicaid has in integrating that into the home care space.
Got it. Next one. One thing people get wrong about working with the VA is...
that as soon as they get contracted and in that work, that the referrals are just going to start flowing in, and they don't have to do any groundwork of building those relationships and educating their community.
All right. One thing that's changed in Medicaid recently is?
I would say electronic visit verification is becoming more of a hard mandate, to where now they're starting to impose penalty fees if you don't have that in place. And so it's important to know what's happening in your state, especially if you're participating in Medicaid or you're considering participating in Medicaid, that you get familiar with it.
Great. Okay, if you don't work with third-party payers, then what happens?
I think that private pay, there's a lot of studies that, especially Home Care Pulse's benchmark study shows that private pay dollars are increasing. I think, the cost of care in the home and the economy, it's costing more. The amount that you're paying your caregivers, it's costing more. And so there's other ways to make that up through diversifying your payer lines into third-party payer opportunities like the VA, like Medicaid. And I think it will elicit an opportunity for long-term business sustainability when you have a bit of a mix in your business.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, last one. It's a good idea to bring in a partner for billing for third-party payers when what?
I would say when you are looking to scale your business and grow. I would say that this is a component that you can really, outsource to someone like Paradigm to be able to assist you with that. So that way you can really focus your efforts on providing high quality care. You can focus your efforts on the sale and marketing and the growth component. And you don't really have to focus as much on understanding all of the codes that are out there and all of the compliance requirements that are needed for these types of payers, because you have an expert as a partner helping you.
Awesome. All right, that's the show.
On behalf of the team here at Ava, thanks for listening to our show. We'll be back next week with another episode. So make sure you subscribe wherever you listen. If you have feedback on the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or send us an email to podcast@joinava.com. Thanks. And remember, the year may be 2024, but hindsight is always 2020.